Chapter 411, Great Future Plans. Renzu was overjoyed upon seeing his son and ran towards him. Verdant Great Sun had turned into a white ghost and was lying beside a lake, scooping out the water with a bowl and drinking it. The water was like wine with its fragrance pervading the area. Verdant Great Sun drank it with utmost satisfaction. "My son, don't drink any more. Come, let's go back." Renzu walked towards Verdant Great Sun and shouted. "Esteemed father, how did you come here? This is great, let's drink together." Verdant Great Sun opened his hazy eyes and looked at Renzu. Renzu seized the wine bowl from him and said with exasperation, "Don't drink any more, you only know how to drink wine. Everyone knows there is a bewitching lake in the land of the dead, and its water is the bewitching soup. When ghosts drink it, they become muddle-headed and lose the desire to leave." Verdant Great Sun, however, refuted, "Father, you are wrong. This is not the bewitching soup, it is the soul-calming wine. It can calm down your soul and remove all the impurities. Your soul will no longer be restless and you will experience utmost tranquility in your heart. This is one of the best quality wines in this world. I don't care what wine it is, you have to follow me back." Renzu pulled Verdant Great Sun's hand, but found Verdant Great Sun was as heavy as a mountain and could not be budged. Verdant Great Sun shook his head. "Some people, upon death, will be as heavy as a mountain. Some people, upon death, will be light as a feather. Father, I had reputation Gu in my life and died after bathing in the light of glory. When I arrived here, my body had become heavier than a mountain, I cannot even walk a single step and can only lie down here." "What?" Renzu immediately felt gloomy and anxiously shouted, "I told you before, a tall tree attracts the wind, reputation is not always a good thing. Throw away the reputation Gu." Verdant Great Sun shook his head and sighed, "We were not born with fame and fortune, we also cannot take them with us after death. After I died, reputation Gu left me. It is fixed immortal travel Gu that has accompanied me." Fixed immortal travel Gu could bring Verdant Great Sun's soul out of the door of life and death or even bring him to any place in the outside world. However, Verdant Great Sun could only truly resurrect after walking through the path of life. "What do we do now?" Renzu realized he had been played by Wisdom Gu. Although he had arrived at the deepest part of the door of life and death, a death domain that had endless darkness, and has also found Verdant Great Sun, he discovered he could not bring back his son. At this moment, Fairness Gu spoke, "Oh Renzu, do you still not understand? There are only two paths in door of life and death, both appeared because of destiny Gu. Life and death is determined by destiny. All living beings live and thus die, this is the cycle that allows the universe to continue existing. Your eldest son Verdant Great Sun died, this is destiny and you should accept it. Moreover, he is living a good life here, Obsession Death Domain is the world's most tranquil place. He is drinking the world's supreme quality wine and is free from all the worries of the outside world, do you know how blissful this is?" Renzu stood there and looked at his flesh and blood for a while before heaving a deep sigh. He knew he could not bring back his son's soul, at least it was like that for now. He bid farewell to the Fairness Gu and also his son, and left the Obsession Death Domain. He stepped on another path this time, it was the path of life which went from darkness to light. However, Renzu soon realized walking this path was countless times more difficult than when he walked in through the path of death. There were many more suffering Gu on path of life than path of death. When Renzu had walked through the path of death, his journey became smoother along the way and the suffering Gu lesser the further he walked. But as he walked through the path of life, there was not only more suffering Gu, but every step he took would cause much more suffering Gu to fly over and obstruct him. Courage Gu could not resist them any longer, Renzu, there are too many suffering Gu and they will continue to increase. There is peace in death, but life has endless suffering. Go to Dang Hun Mountain quickly and break some gut stones. If you want to survive, just relying on courage won't be enough, you need guts too. Renzu hurried forward to Dang Hun Mountain and picked the Daoist Gu while enduring the tremors in his soul. With Daoist Gu's help, his soul strengthened greatly, and although he still suffered the tremors, it was not of much worry. He passed through Dang Hun Mountain and arrived at Luopa Valley. Luopa Valley was a maze with winding and twisted paths. Occasionally, there were a large area of bewilderment fog which could cause the soul to loosen, and occasionally, Luopa wind would blow through and cut apart the soul. Renzu had fallen into the lowest part of my life and could not distinguish the directions. Because his soul was strengthened by Daoist Gu, it was loosening in the bewilderment fog at a slower speed. The loosened soul was cut apart by the Luopa wind. Renzu almost completely lost his way, but fortunately at this time, Faith Gu flew out and shone upon his path. Renzu was able to walk out of the Luopa Valley with only the essence of his soul remaining. He let out a huge breath of relief and could feel he was close to success. He walked to the reverse-flowing river. This was the final barrier in the path of life. It was extremely difficult to move against the stream. Endless suffering pushed upon him, causing him to make very slow progress. However, he forcibly persevered and walked towards the light. Almost there. He looked at the success that was just ahead of him, only one final step remained. He let out a breath of turbid air and relaxed, forgetting the warning of the wisdom Gu, he stopped. This brief pause caused Renzu to be washed away by the river. Life was not easy. It was like a boat moving against the flow of the river. If you do not continue moving forward, you will be pushed back. Renzu was washed away by the river into the depths of Luopa Valley. He was so tired he could not budge a bit and was trapped in the Luopa Valley. Fang Yuan broke the final gut stone and groaned in satisfaction. Right now, he felt very comfortable. The heavy injuries in his soul were already completely recovered, and moreover, his soul had even strengthened by 5 times. A feeling of power burst out from the depths of his heart. This feeling did not come from the strengthening of his physical body but from the vigor of his spirits. Fang Yuan had a feeling he could do anything easily, whether it was analyzing problems or doing multiple tasks. Unfortunately, there are only over 100 gut stones on Dang Hun Mountain and not all of them contained Daoist Gu. Fang Yuan felt some regret. When Hu Immortal obtained Dang Hun Mountain, it had already changed hands several times and was completely looted. Hu Immortal moved it to the Blessed Land and managed it for decades. Almost every year, she would send large amounts of foxes to their deaths at Dang Hun Mountain, using their soul to irrigate the mountain and create gut stones. However, these gut stones were almost all used by the Hu Immortal. After she died, these over 100 gut stones had slowly grown over close to 8 years and now were completely used by Fang Yuan. According to the Hu Immortal Land Spirit's description, close to 10,000 foxes needed to be sacrificed to grow a gut stone. The stronger the beast kings that died, the more gut stones would be produced. Fang Yuan could not adopt this method. When the Blessed Land was at its prime, it was inevitable and alright for Hu Immortal to do so. However, the Blessed Land was very weak now and the fox groups had decreased by a large amount. Killing these fox groups was not sensible for long-term prospects. With his soul injuries recovered, Fang Yuan started quietly thinking his future plans without relaxing the slightest bit. Obtaining the Hu Immortal Blessed Land was no doubt a huge help to his plans, but at the same time also greatly affected his plans. Now, with Dang Hun Mountain in my possession, my soul's foundation can continue to strengthen. And from my previous life, I have experience and insight in controlling the blood bats. Such enormous advantage should be used. Walking the enslavement path is an obvious choice now. However, there is also a disadvantage in enslavement path in that the enslavement path Gu masters can be easily assaulted and beheaded. So I cannot relax in my strength path cultivation as well. With this, Fang Yuan was going to walk on both strength and enslavement paths, organizing and feeding 2 sets of Gu worms. If it was before, it would be difficult for Fang Yuan to do this. But now, with Hu Immortal Blessed Land, it would be no problem. The perfect outcome is to refine second aperture Gu. With second aperture, I could divide the sets of enslavement and strength path into different apertures without disturbing each other. At the same time, there would be enough primeval essence to control the 2 sets of Gu worms. At that time, with a wave of his hand, a huge army of beasts and insects would cover the sky and earth, creating a river of blood in a blink of an eye, creating destruction and mayhem. If there was any foolish person who tried to use the tactic of beheading the leader, then Fang Yuan's strength path cultivation would make them realize how cruel reality was and why flowers were red. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan took out the second aperture Gu from his aperture. This Gu was like a peanut shell, shining with golden light. The patterns on its surface were scarlet veins of blood. This was the embryo form of the second aperture Gu, formed from combining false Gu and lifespan Gu. It could survive for 40 years. There are enough immortal essence to truly refine the second aperture Gu. 2/3 watch Gu can also be easily obtained, but I still require divine travel Gu. Fang Yuan pondered. Immortal Gu were unique, only one immortal Gu of the same type could exist in the world. Divine travel Gu was already transformed into fixed immortal travel Gu and no longer existed now. This allowed a new divine travel Gu to appear in the world. Moreover, there was an extraordinary advantage of divine travel Gu: it could be easily obtained. It was not like the other immortal Gu that were so hard to capture. The legends of Renzu had written it clearly: as long as one drank the 4 top quality wines of the world, divine travel Gu could condense into being in their body. Apart from the wine brewed by the wild beasts and those that were naturally formed, humans' brewing techniques had flourished continually, and now the amount of top-quality wines were much more than the ancient times. Searching for the 4 top-quality wines might be somewhat troublesome, but could be done by spending some time. Fang Yuan had the blessed land and the assistance of the little Hu Immortal Land spirit. But the main problem did not lie here. Because divine travel Gu could be easily obtained, others could also easily take advantage of it. In case someone else obtained divine travel Gu, no matter how much top-quality wines Fang Yuan drank, he would not obtain the divine travel Gu. Southern borders Fei clan possess a top-quality wine Zhuang Si Fei. Eastern Seas rank 7 Gu immortal Zui Xian Wang has created a sea of wine, concealing countless wines, and holds a wine reception every year. Northern Plains Imperial Court has the long life wine. These great forces or maybe other Gu immortals as well could be in possession of 1 or 2 top-quality wine. Their chances of obtaining divine travel Gu is much greater than mine. With this calculation, Fang Yuan not only had to resist the earthly calamity and manage the blessed land, he also had to quickly gather the 4 top-quality wine and refine second aperture Gu. However, these are not all. The crucial point lies in spring-autumn cicada. Time is flowing 5 times faster here. Spring-autumn cicada's recovery speed will also become extremely quick. Being able to rebirth 3 times is already an extremely good luck. I cannot gamble on luck the 4th time. Before spring-autumn cicada recovers, I need to have success at first attempt Gu, immediate success Gu, smooth success Gu, or any of the others. Fang Yuan did not have enough strength before. Now, he had the blessed land and abundant resources. He could try to get these Gu already. Chapter 412, I Like Your Fear. Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Southern District. Yen Yong, wake up quickly. Stop sleeping, you've slept for 3 years already. A voice woke Yen Yong up from his sleep. A lump of gray stones with a mossy surface started to vibrate, as the tremors intensified, causing the dust to disperse. From the large oval stone, 4 limbs and a head appeared like the blossoming of a flower. Next, a gray rockman stood up. Yan Yong woke up from his sleep. Grandpa. Yan Yong opened his eyes, looking at the rockman who woke him up. It was his 800-year-old grandpa, the leader of the Huixia tribe. Grandpa, why did you wake me up? I want to sleep for another 2 to 3 years. Yan Yong sighed, begrudging. Rock men love to sleep. When they sleep, they curled into a ball, forming a large oval stone. Each sleeping session lasts 7 to 8 years. Stop sleeping, my grandson, you are already 180 years old. Your father died earlier, and I cannot live much longer. In a few decades, you will be our Huixia tribe's new tribe leader. Rock men have a long lifespan, generally 1,000 years to live. Ordinary humans could barely live for 100 years, but Yan Yong was 180, and had just reached adulthood. Grandpa, I do not want to be tribe leader. After becoming leader, I will not have time to sleep casually anymore. Yan Yong pouted, but saw his grandpa staring angrily, and chose to shut up. Huixia tribe leader chided, why haven't you grown up? You slept for so many years in vain. Quickly pack up, and clean the moss off you, pull off all the weed that had grown on you. Bring the offerings with you and go with grandpa to the ground. We have to meet the immortal, we cannot be disrespectful. Ah! It is time to pay offerings to the immortal again. But I remember there is still a year left. Yan Yong said as he plucked the weed off him. After sleeping for so many years, his armpits, his groin, and back all had lots of weed. Especially the black thread grass in his groin area, they were hard as steel and curly. Every time he plucked one, Yan Yong felt great pain. Sigh, there is a problem this time. The immortal changed, this immortal came not too long ago, he is calling for us. Old clan leader sighed and said with worry. New male immortal. I hope he is easier to speak to than that female immortal. Maybe we can discuss with him, after all, we have to contribute so much offerings every 10 years, it is taxing. The other tribe leaders and I also have this thought. On a large altar made of green rocks, Fang Yuan wore his black robe as his long black hair was let down, sitting at the main seat staring at the people below with his deep dark pupils. There were tens of rock men kneeling below, among them, 8 were rock men leaders, 2 gray rock men, 3 granite rock men, 1 iron rockman, 1 green rockman, and 1 white rockman. At the same time, there were offerings. Large amounts of ore containing gold, silver, bronze, iron, as well as other gems and jewels, gu worms etc. All sorts of metallic elements would grow on the rockmen's bodies as time passed. Fang Yuan looked at these offerings, understanding at once why Dang Hun Palace was built so luxuriously. If these were brought to Earth, they would be a huge asset, but here, their greatest use was to become gu refinement materials. Who immortal using these things as decoration was only her womanly love for beauty. If she could choose to exchange them for primeval stones, she would trade away all these gems and jewels without a second thought. Among the offerings, the most valuable were gu worms. But these gu were mostly rank 1 rock skin gu, rank 2 monolith gu. There was only 1 rank 3 gu, stone aperture gu. Fang Yuan had once used this gu, back then spring-autumn cicada's pressure on the aperture could not be relieved, thus when he was desperate, he used it. The rock men were skilled at digging, they lived deep underground. Their food was dirt, and sometimes when they dig underground, they would discover gu worms. What did you say? You want to reduce the offerings? Fang Yuan's eyes squinted as he stood up, slowly walking down the stairs, coming towards the rock men leaders. The rock men were tall and huge, even when they kneeled on the ground, their shoulders were still higher than Fang Yuan's head. Esteemed Lord Immortal, our Rockmen tribes have contributed so much offerings during these 30 years. During these years, the earth rumbled, the north area had floods, the east area had fires, life is difficult. These things that we managed to acquire are getting harder and harder to find. Immortal, please have mercy, and forgive our inability, reduce the offering amount by a bit. The oldest Rockmen tribe leader begged. That's right, Lord Immortal, please reduce the offerings. These years, we have been decreasing in numbers. Immortal, please understand, we will never forget your kindness. The other Rockmen leaders started saying. Reduce the offerings? He, of course you can. In fact, I can exempt you all from these offerings. Fang Yuan smiled kindly and warmly. The Rockmen's expression were joyous. But I have a condition. Next, Fang Yuan said, I need you all to dig a river, from the north, transport the water towards the east, to stop the fire from spreading. What? Hearing this, the Rockmen were shocked. Quickly, they reacted, shouting loudly. Esteemed Lord Immortal, you cannot do this. Digging a river from scratch, this is a huge project, we Rockmen need sleep. Without sufficient sleep, we will die. And there is a great fire and huge amounts of water. You ask us to go dig a river, but isn't that asking us to go die? At once, everyone flew into a rage. Many young Rockmen were kneeling at one corner, but hearing this, they rushed over, staring at Fang Yuan vigilantly. Master. Who Immortal Land Spirit beside Fang Yuan saw this and she felt slightly worried. The Rockmen had a stubborn nature, they had foolhardiness, emphasizing their pride and would not accede to demands. When they are rash, they would even attack demon venerables or immortal venerables, regardless of who the other party is. Who Immortal was only to contain these Rockmen because at the start, she had spent a lot of effort and gave them a lot of benefits. Master, these Rockmen do not reason with people, asking them to offer these things was already their limit. Little Who Immortal sent her thoughts to Fang Yuan secretly, reminding him. Limit? Fang Yuan scoffed, his mouth opening as he showed his bright white teeth, laughing ruthlessly. You Rockmen are too insolent, you dare to bargain with me? Humph. The place you are living at is mine. The dirt you eat is mine. The spirit spring beside your tribe is also mine. You live here, you are my slave. I want to dig a new river, that is not a request, and not a transaction, it is an order. The Rockmen heard this and they all stood up, looking furious. Immortal, you don't know what's good for you, you dare to look down on us Rockmen. Back then when we relocated here, it was because of a female immortal. But the environment here is getting worse, who would want to stay here anymore? You want us to dig a river, that is asking us to die. Do you think we Rockmen are fools? We Rockmen are born from heaven and earth, we will not be your slaves. Let's go, relocate, I've had enough of this shitty place. The Rockmen leaders shouted, falling out with Fang Yuan at once. The followers they brought, the young Rockmen all came forward, clenching their fists as they stared at Fang Yuan with a dangerous look. You want to leave? Ha ha ha. Fang Yuan threw his head back and laughed, like he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Next, he stopped laughing, looking at these Rockmen coldly, his tone was chilly. Where do you think this is? Come and go as you please. The old rules are no more, from today onwards, I am the greatest ruler, my words are heaven's will. You will abide by my rules, even if you don't want to. Ah! Many young Rockmen clenched their fists and howled. Immortal, you are trying to step over my tribe's baseline. Immortal, you might be strong, but we are not afraid. We Rockmen will never lower our heads to brute force, we are natural warriors, we fear no death. Only love can make us dig out our hearts. Only warmth can make us lower our backs. Roar! Fang Yuan pushed with his hand and a golden dragon flew out. The golden dragon roared, killing the rockman that was screaming the loudest. Ah, he killed the granite rockman's old tribe leader. Old tribe leader is dead, we have to get revenge. Even an immortal has to die under our tribe's fury. Granite old tribe leader's death was like the trigger, causing the rockman's anger to erupt. The rockmen attacked Fang Yuan in waves, every step made a dent in the ground, as they gave off an impressive aura. Dozens of rockmen attacked together, giving off the disposition of a grand army of 10,000. From their bodies, numerous lights shone. There were also goo worms inhibiting these rockmen's bodies, they were activated through their will. But a moment later, these lights vanished. Little Hu Immortal struck, sealing all the goo worms. Fang Yuan snickered as he began his slaughter. The rockmen were not afraid of death, but their strength was inferior to Fang Yuan, they were all broken down into shards, dying a pathetic death. But these rock fragments gathered like magnets, forming new rockmen. Kill. Resist the tyranny, take revenge for father. We are born from heaven and earth, we die due to heaven and earth, thus we have no fear. Tiny rockmen charged over, and were all slaughtered by Fang Yuan. But these rock fragments gathered into even smaller rockmen. The number of these rockmen continued to shrink, but after they were formed, they charged towards Fang Yuan and shouted things like exacting revenge for their grandpa, father etc. This was the way the rockmen reproduced. It was a male-only race, after the old rockmen dies, the soul and rocks they split into will form new rockmen, and inherit a portion of the old rockmen's memories, or some important experiences. In some cases, old rockmen sleep too much and their soul foundation accumulates to a degree, they would split out a portion of their bodies to form new tiny rockmen. After Fang Yuan killed the third wave of rockmen, the world was finally silent once more. Only one rockman remained, lying on the ground, shivering. What is your name? Fang Yuan slowly walked towards him. My name is Yen. Yen Yong. The young rockman stammered. Do you know why I left only you alive? Fang Yuan stood on Yen Yong's head. No. I do not know. Because you are terrified. Because I like your fear and horror towards me. Fang Yuan smiled warmly. Chapter 413, The Show. 3 days later, a seriously injured Yen Yong returned to his tribe and woke up all the hibernating rockmen. A male immortal is here, he is a demon, he wanted to enslave all of us. Not only this, he also wanted to take away the beautiful men of our rockmen tribe, to become his plaything. We rockmen are born of nature, free and unfettered, how could we bow our backs to such lecherous authority? We resisted at the spot. The immortal was too strong, but we rockmen were not afraid of sacrificing and fought him without fearing death. Finally, we injured him and beat him into retreat. The other tribesmen were all sacrificed and only I was able to return. I am dying but that immortal is still alive. Before he ran away, he said he will lead his fox army and annihilate all our rockmen tribes. Yen Yong weakly lamented, announcing a frightening information to his tribesmen. The rockmen were shocked and afraid, grieving and also furious, some declared war, some wanted revenge, some mentioned migrating and some wanted to discuss. They had become lost their bearings without a leader, whether it was the inheritor or the old tribe leader, they had all died at Fang Yuan's hands. There were altogether 8 tribes of rock men and they had fallen into chaos now. Some rock men wanted to get the concrete details from Yen Yong, but Yen Yong's injuries were too severe, and after informing them of this grievous news, he lost consciousness. While they were still in the midst of discussing, just like Yen Yong said, waves after waves of fox groups started attacking rockmen tribes. The rockmen resisted with all their strength, but there were way too many fox groups. The situation was gradually turning grave. The 8 tribes had no choice but to ally and retreat underground to defend themselves. However, the fox groups did not let them go and repeatedly attacked the underground. The fox groups paid a disastrous price every time they attacked, but they still came endlessly. The rockmen cursed Fang Yuan. Their hatred towards him were like an inferno that could not be extinguished. The situation became worse day by day and despair spread in the hearts of the rockmen. However, right at this time, Yen Yong woke up. Rockmen could recuperate from their injuries through sleep. His injuries had healed for the most part. He immediately led the rockmen and made beautiful counterattacks. We rockmen are a courageous group with no fear of death. Even the immortal cannot humiliate us. Yen Yong announced to everyone and raised their morale. Don't think the immortal is strong, he is only a paper tiger and can only send these fox groups to their death, he is already injured. At the same time, he proclaimed the injuries of the immortal and gave hope to the rockmen. The despairing rockmen tightly grabbed onto this hope like it was a straw that could save them as they were drowning. Yen Yong changed the subject and talked about the old tribe leaders. He was injured by the combined efforts of the old tribe leaders. The sacrifice of the old tribe leaders is our greatest grief. Especially the old White Rock tribe leader, his life ended as he was in my arms. Before he died he entrusted the whole tribe to me. I looked as his soul dispersed, and felt ashamed. Why wasn't it me who died, but him? He beat his chest as he said this, appearing to be extremely sad. Immediately, some rockmen persuaded, Lord Yen Yong, don't grieve. It is already very amazing you were able to survive and bring us the warning, even leading us towards victory. That's right, we Iron Rockmen all admire you. Since the old tribe leader entrusted the tribe to you, then please lead us White Rockmen. What rockmen liked was to sleep soundly and were not too obsessed with authority. Especially, at this juncture of life and death where they were living in anxiety, the rockmen hoped for a strong and brave rockman to lead them. Thereupon, Yen Yong first inherited his tribe's tribe leader position and then White Rock tribe. Over a month later, he got hold of the remaining tribes one after another, becoming the joint leader of the 8 rockmen tribes. Another half a month passed, he led the rockmen and drove out the fox groups, protecting his tribes. This is not enough. As long as the immortal doesn't die, we have no future. The fox groups will regroup and attack our home again. We can only attack that immortal mountain and completely kill the immortal for a beautiful and peaceful life. Yen Yong immediately mentioned attacking Dang Hun Mountain. Some rockmen, however, seemed to hesitate. We have just suffered such a bitter battle, we just want to sleep now. Our rockmen population has decreased greatly, we don't have the strength to attack that demonic stronghold. We have large numbers of offsprings born from this bitter battle, we need to raise them properly till they become adults. Yen Yong could only shift the topic to the old White Rock tribe leader. My tribesmen, will I bring you to your deaths? Attacking the immortal mountain was not my idea. It was a secret the old White Rock tribe leader told me before his death. He said this immortal mountain is the legendary Dang Hun Mountain. Dang Hun Mountain has gut stones. If our rock men can obtain these gut stones, it can increase our strength and make our tribe stronger. The old White Rock tribe leader was the oldest and the most experienced rockman. He was widely known by the rockmen as the Sage. With his last words along with Yen Yong's clear might, the rockmen were agitated and formed an expedition to attack Dang Hun Mountain. Fang Yuan had intentionally arranged some fox groups around Dang Hun Mountain, forming a weak defensive line. Yan Yong continually boosted the Rockman's morale. See, there is not much left of the demonic immortal's fox army. We are already close to victory. The Rockmen sang of victory and triumph along the way, charging toward Dang Hun Mountain with uplifted morale. At Dang Hun Mountain, Fang Yuan appeared with a group of foxes and fought a great battle with the Rockmen. Fang Yuan showed terrifying strength and killed many Rockmen, causing all the Rockmen to be terrified. But at this moment, Yan Yong stood up and pointed to Fang Yuan's injuries and his paper tiger, immortal essence, and fought a decisive battle with him. The fox groups were eliminated, as Fang Yuan was defeated, forced to escape from Yan Yong's assault. Wait till I come back after gathering immortal essence from the water and fire. That moment will be your end. Before retreating, Fang Yuan shouted loudly with a malevolent expression. Rockmen had rough physique and their movements were slow, and not being familiar with Dang Hun Mountain's terrain, they could only let Fang Yuan escape. The Rockmen worshipped Yan Yong for beating back the immortal and cheered victoriously. My tribesmen, now is not the time to cheer. Yan Yong stood up. We can't stay on Dang Hun Mountain for long, this is a demonic land. The old White Rock tribe leader had told me, every year only during these few days, we Rockmen can enter this place safely. We need to hurry and collect the gut stones here. 3 days later, we need to leave this place. Their bodies were made of solid rock. There was a burden on their soul to hold up such a strong and firm body. If the Rockmen moved too excessively, it could harm their soul. Thus, Rockmen would spend 80% of their whole life sleeping and nurturing their soul. When the foundation of their soul was thick enough, it would leak out. This overflowing part of the soul would fall on a rock and form a new life. Rockmen tribes reproduce like this. After the Rockmen obtained the gut stones, the Daoist Gu could strengthen and expand their soul, causing the soul to overflow and form little Rockmen. 3 days later, inside the mountain, in Dang Hun Palace. N0v3LTR0VE served as the original host for this chapter's release on N0v3LB1N. Yan Yong kneeled on the ground and reported with reverence and fear as he lowered his head and bowed, reporting to the immortal, with these 3 days of soul strengthening, our Rockmen tribes have increased by 6,000 little Rockmen. Including us old tribesmen, the whole population has increased to 3 times the population before the battle. Fang Yuan was sitting grandly on the fluffy bed and looked down at Yan Yong. Good, with this, your Rockmen have enough manpower to start the river construction. Next, you remember what to do, right? Or do you need me to tell you again? Yan Yong promptly replied, Supreme Immortal, I did not dare to forget your words and have engraved them in my mind. Good. Fang Yuan nodded indifferently, I will give you 3 months of time to dig a great river that cuts across the eastern and northern areas. Ah, 3 months. Yan Yong was stupefied, mighty immortal, us Rockmen need sleep to nurture our souls. If we move excessively, we will tire ourselves to death. The great river is so long, and with only 3 months of time, we would have not be able to have any rest. If we work like this, our Rockmen tribes will probably die out. You won't die completely. I have already calculated, there will be over 200 Rockmen remaining. Fang Yuan laughed. Yan Yong felt a chill in his body. There were 10,000 Rockmen now, but there would only be over 200 after the project. How terrifying of a sacrifice was this? 3 months later, I want to see a great river. If I don't see it, I will tell the truth to your tribesmen before I kill you. Now roll away. Fang Yuan's tone was cold and unfeeling. Yan Yong's body trembled all over hearing this demonic threat. He had a very deep fear towards Fang Yuan and did not dare to retort, his body curled up into a ball and surprising, he really rolled away. Master, we paid a huge price back then to bring in these Rockmen. The little Hu immortal land spirit tactfully persuaded, she could not endure seeing such a huge amount of rock men dying like this. Don't worry, the rock men has still a great use to me. And isn't it easy to increase their population? Fong Yuan leaned on a chair with his eyes squinting as he took out a burial soul toad from his aperture. Burial soul toad was a rank 4 gu used to store things. It was one of the gu worms left by the Hu immortal. It was palm-sized big and was gray color. There were small warts all over its back and its large eyes flashed with weird and gloomy green light. It could only store souls and its belly would inflate as it sucked in the souls. Fong Yuan used this to collect the souls of the rock men who died in the battle with the fox groups. Now, this soul burial toad's belly was deflated. The souls that were inside it before were placed on Dang Hun Mountain by Fong Yuan to breed new gut stones. Fong Yuan used a part of the gut stones to make his soul 6 times stronger than that of a normal person. And the remaining gut stones were given to the Rockmen tribes. The Rockmen had no idea, the strengthening of their souls was all due to the death of their companions. Chapter 4:14, Conscience of Those in Power. Yan Yong got out of Dang Hun Palace. After getting through some twisted and dark tunnels, he arrived on Dang Hun Mountain. After seeing the crystal pink mountain, Yan Yong blew out a breath of turbid air. His fear and pressure had decreased greatly after leaving Fong Yuan. After moving on the mountain for a while, he was finally discovered by his tribemates. "Oh, our great and honorable leader, our hero, you are here." Some rock men cheered. "Please let me kiss your foot, to express my adoration of you." A few rock men kneeled on the ground. Big hero, big hero. Your courage is greater than heaven, your guts is thicker than the earth." Some tiny rock men formed into groups and shouted loudly. Yan Yong laughed, no one knew how bitter he felt. The cheers he heard were extremely joyous, there were many tribesmen around him, gathering together, but he felt extremely lonely at this point. He looked at these tribesmen, these smiling rock men, they were all going to die 3 months later. Dying of exhaustion after digging the river. But what could he do? From what the other rock men saw, Dang Hun Mountain's victory was glorious, it was worth celebrating. But only he knew, this was only a game manipulated in the dark by that immortal. The cruel and chilling truth made him understand clearly that the sacrifice of those rock men, and this difficult victory, it was so laughably pathetic, they were powerless. He led his tribesmen and gained more victories, but at the same time his fear towards Fong Yuan grew. That immortal, he is a demon. His heart is harder and colder than us rock men, his strength is greater than the weight of the mountains. I am so weak, what can I do? Resistance means death. I admit my cowardice, I am really afraid of dying. I have not slept enough, I am only 180 years old. The moment Yan Yong thought about Fong Yuan's appearance, his heart was filled with terror. His lingering bit of conscience was torturing him. He knew, he was about to send his tribesmen to death personally. He was being grilled by his conscience, every praise from his tribesmen was like a whip, causing his heart to be full of pain and scars. "Our esteemed, beloved tribe leader, you are finally back. Everyone's waiting." The rock men gave way to Yan Yong, as he walked unobstructed towards higher ground. "My tribesmen, these 3 days, our tribe has grown by many times. Our conquest has gotten us glorious results. But such victory is insufficient. Are you all willing to continue following me, towards a brighter future?" Yan Yong looked down at his tribesmen and shouted loudly. The rock men used the loudest cheer they could muster to express their 120% support towards Yan Yong. Yan Yong nodded, he had expected such an outcome. Among the rock men, there were no outliers or knowledgeable old rock men. During the few intense battles, they had gloriously sacrificed themselves. The remaining rock men were all newborn, they had a simple mind. As for the remaining old rock men, they were all hardcore supporters of Yan Yong, his loyal worshippers. Yan Yong patiently waited for the cheers to stop before continuing. These 3 days, I have been considering, how do we deal with the escaped immortal? Immortals have immortal essence, thus they are able to control the fox army, and have terrifying strength. He must have retreated to the lake at the north area, or hid in east area's fire pit. We cannot allow him to recover. Tribe leader is right. Tribe leader is too smart, we cannot allow that evil immortal to recover his immortal essence. When that accursed demon recovers his strength, he will definitely find trouble with us rock men. But what do we do now? The lake and fire pit are both dangerous areas. Even us rock men cannot last long there. And these 2 areas are so wide, who knows where the immortal escaped to? Everyone was speaking as the scene turned noisy. Yan Yong interrupted everyone's discussions, shouting, "That's why, I thought of the only solution. We will use soil to fill the fire pit and lake, that way, the immortal will be unable to recover his immortal essence." Oh God, that is an insane idea. At once, some rock men shouted. My great tribe leader, the lake is so wide, it causes people to stare in amazement. The fire pit has a fatal temperature, how can we use soil to fill it? That is impossible. An old rock man immediately argued. Yan Yong stared at this old rock man deeply, remembering him to heart. This rock man dared to question him, it showed that his idolization was not deep enough, thus he shall get the heaviest and toughest job later, working to death. At this time, another old rock man said, "We cannot do this forcefully, I have a solution. Maybe we can dig out a river and direct the lake water to the fire pit, using water to neutralize fire, that will be easier." Yan Yong's killing intent rose even more. This old rock man was very intelligent, he was a bigger threat than the old rock men who rebuked him. He immediately decided in his heart, he was going to send this old rock man to a defense mission. He shall be killed by the fox army, this threat has to be eliminated. Yan Yong praised this old man plainly, shouting, "That is exactly my idea, we have to dig a river and direct the water over to end the fire. The immortal will have no place to recover immortal essence. Actually, White Stone Old Tribe leader taught me before dying, he said that the water at the north and the fire at the east were all done by that evil male immortal. That is the source of his power, just like how we rock men eat soil." So White Stone Old Tribe leader predicted this. White Stone Old Tribe leader, as expected of our philosopher. White Stone Old Tribe leader was already 998 years old, of course he knew a lot. All the rock men nodded, expressing their agreement with White Stone Old Tribe leader, but also felt deep pity and anguish towards his death. Rock men sleep for a long time, they have little interaction with each other. This sense of distance and mystery caused the deceased White Stone Old Tribe leader's knowledge to feel extremely profound. Using a phrase from Earth, if White Stone Old Tribe leader could hear this in the afterlife, he might jump out of his coffin in anger. But unfortunately, he was completely killed by Fong Yuan, his soul was not spared, broken down on Dang Hun Mountain by Fong Yuan. The essence landed on the mountain, forming a gut stone. Whether this gust one was smashed by a rock man, or Fong Yuan himself, that would be an eternal mystery. After discussing, the rock men agreed that Yan Yong should be the leader, overseeing the digging to connect the water and fire. Fong Yuan hid in the background, looking at this scene secretly. After seeing the finalized plan, he ordered Little Hu immortal. The land spirit released a trace of Dang Hun Mountain's power, and the rock men felt their soul tremble, they got very dizzy. Many young rock men fainted on the spot. Oh no, let's hurry and get out. Dang Hun Mountain is going to attack. Yan Yong said, as he left his tribesmen away from Dang Hun Mountain. They did not return to their original home, but instead got to the north and east area in a grand fashion. In Dang Hun Mountain, Fang Yuan looked expressionlessly at these leaving rock men using the smoke cloud. "Master, have you heard of the story of the rock men?" Little Hu Immortal's tail was swaying as she spoke meekly. Fang Yuan laughed lightly. "You want to urge me to use soft tactics with the rock men? Master is so smart." Little Hu Immortal's large eyes were shining. "Heh, it seems you are not too familiar with this. Often, the power of fear and hatred surpasses gratitude greatly." Back then, when Fang Yuan found out that there was a group of rock men, he was overjoyed. The rock men lived underground, they ate soil as food and were skilled at digging. A large ground of rock men could even build an underground city deep in the ground. Rock men could excavate resources for the blessed land's owner, they were excellent slaves. Many Gu immortals want to buy rock men and move them into their own blessed land. For Hu immortal blessed land, because of Dang Hun Mountain, and provided it had enough souls, just one rockman can use the gut stones to breed into a large clan. Fang Yuan could use this to mass-produce rockmen and engage in slave trade with other Gu immortals. Back then, Hu Immortal brought all these rock men in with the same intentions. It was true, rock men only succumbed to soft tactics. Most of the rock men were stubborn and tough, warrior not afraid to die. Thus, many Gu immortals have to use kindness and benefits to slowly use these rock men and maximize their worth. Hu Immortal used such a method. NOVROLSS1N hosted the premiere release of this chapter. But Fang Yuan did not adopt this. It was too gentle. He wanted squeeze them dry, to gain the most benefits. This world's competition is so cruel, not only did man compete with each other, they also had to deal with disasters and calamities, who knows how many heroes had fallen to floods. So what if you are a Gu immortal? If you did not arm yourself and make use of every resource you had to strengthen yourself, Gu immortal's demise would be the best example. A demonic path member has to make the best of his time, considering even the small bit of benefit, taking whatever he can and make himself stronger. Anyone in power has to understand, rules, laws, friendship and morals, these are all tools to squeeze out benefits. Leniency and conscience, cruelty and hatred, they are all the same. Fang Yuan laughed coldly in his heart. After wasting so much time with the rock men, there were only 7 months left to the 6th calamity. The lake at the north, fire pit at the east, they were all scars left by previous calamities, weak spots of the blessed land. When earthly calamities occur, they would be the weakest link. A team is only as strong as its weakest player. The weight a chain can hold up depends on the most fragile section. So what if I am hated, detested, and scolded by countless people? If this world was so simple such that hatred, loathe, and curses work, why would I still need strength? The most important thing was digging the river as soon as possible, to help the blessed land recover as much as it could. It did not matter how many rock men died in the process. Since Dang Hun Mountain was here, he just had to capture a few souls and there would be an uncountable number of rock men produced. Chapter 4:15, For Tomorrow. Rumble rumble. Explosions went off one after another, as dust and smoke rose into the air. This was the site of the river digging project. The rockmen ate soil as food, many of the goo worms on the rockmen's bodies can be used. Lord Tribe Leader, we cannot continue like this. Yesterday, 3 tribesmen died from exhaustion, they had a pitiful death, not even leaving behind a single offspring. An elderly rockman kneeled before Yen Yong as he cried. Once a rockman dies of exhaustion, their soul will dissipate, they will die for real, there will not be any young rockmen formed from their remaining soul. Yen Yong slammed his chest, howling, "Why would I not know? Why would I not know? Heroes have sacrificed for our tribe again. For the bright future of our tribe, for a beautiful tomorrow, they contributed their lives. But precisely so, we cannot slow down. Since the start of the excavation, we have faced many attacks from the Fox army. The size of the Fox group is getting larger, evidently that accursed male immortal is regaining his immortal essence. We have to continue and work hard, digging the river so that he loses his source of power." Old Rockman was stunned, but tribe leader. "You are a good Rockman, you think for our tribe, I understand that. These heroes will not die in vain. Look there, I have already made heroic gravestones for them. Their children and descendants will remember them, and feel gratitude for the sacrifices made." Yan Yong pointed at the gravestones erected. There was a large number of them. The old Rockman looked at the gravestones, sighing. Once the death of the Rockmen appeared, the new tribe leader Yan Yong immediately ordered people to build these gravestones. The low morale was immediately raised. Although every day, countless Rockmen die of exhaustion, they were still in high spirits. "They are dead, what is the use of these gravestones?" The old Rockman was one of the few left who understood the situation. He felt deeply worried. "Oh leader," he bitterly urged, "us Rockmen have to reproduce as well. These Rockmen who die of exhaustion will not even have their souls left, they cannot leave behind descendants." Yan Yong's expression remained unchanged, not saying a word. A young Rockman beside him started grumbling, "You old man, are you afraid of dying?" Old Rockman immediately retorted, "Young man, how can you say that? Yes, I am old, but I am a Rockman, how can a Rockman be afraid of dying? Since you are not afraid to die, why are you talking so much? That's right. We are making contributions to the tribe. What's the matter? We are making a small sacrifice for the bigger good." Beside Yan Yong, a group of young Rockmen started arguing. "Old senior, if you feel tired, take a rest first. It is not a problem, my time is limited, I have to go to the other areas to inspect the progress." Yan Yong patted this old Rockman's shoulder as he walked away, continuing on his inspection. A group of young Rockmen followed behind Yan Yong, talking among themselves, expressing their disdain for that old Rockman. Being despised by these juniors, the old Rockman felt very depressed. Smoke was coming out of his ears. He wanted to rebuke them loudly, but he saw all the gravestones near the construction area, with all sorts of words carved on them. "We have to do this at all cost. As long as we are united, within 3 days, we will complete the river. The bigger our courage, the more we can achieve. To build a beautiful future for our Rockmen tribe. Long live tribe leader Yan Yong. For the bright future of the Rockmen, we contribute our lives, we contribute our youth." The crazed atmosphere engulfed the Rockmen's hearts. Even those Rockmen who died from exhaustion showed a smile before they died. Old Rockman wanted to speak, but his mouth opened many times and did not manage to say a word. He kneeled on the spot in a daze for a long while, until suddenly, he lifted his fist and slammed the ground heavily. Bam! It was a heavy sound. The old Rockman stood up slowly, silently moving his aged body towards the construction ground. Yan Yong rushed to the next site. The river channel was already starting to form, large numbers of adult Rockmen were digging in the channel. Beside them, the physically weaker young Rockmen formed into patrolling groups. Some were inspecting the river digging, some were carving slogans, some were making heroic gravestones. These young Rockmen were called Rock Guards, formed by Yan Yong personally. Reporting to tribe leader. 6 young Rockmen went to Yan Yong and reported the results of these few days of labor. Reporting to great leader, we have dug another 25 kilometers in this segment. Reporting to Great Leader, we have unfortunately sacrificed 120 tribesmen, they are all heroes of our tribe. Reporting to Great Leader, we actually found 3 tribesmen sleeping on the job. This is a disgrace to our tribe, we have to criticize them. Very good, you have all done well. Remember, you have to erect gravestones for our deceased heroes. At the same time, tie up those disgraceful rock men and criticize them up public, let them learn courage from humiliation. Yen Yong spoke caringly. Understood. You are all the future of our tribe, seeing you all is like seeing the bright future of our tribe. You have to continue working hard. Yen Yong praised. The young rock men were extremely spurred on, their bodies were trembling. Everything for the rock men tribe. Our esteemed and beloved leader, you are our symbol of pride. We unite by your side, walking towards a bright and meaningful future. They growled one after another, showing a fanatic gaze. But Yen Yong avoided eye contact with them, these young rockmen's enthusiasm made him fearful. He looked at a faraway place. There, all the different segments of the river were being excavated. Yen Yong could see many rock men looking down at the yellow soil while lowering their thick backs. The river channel was tens of meters wide, segment after segment, a long line showed up in his vision. This was a majestic project. Every time Yen Yong saw this scena, his heart palpitated. As long as they are united, the Rockmen tribe's strength was overwhelming, it could change the world. But when Yen Yong thought of Fang Yuan, that terrifying demon, his heart felt a strong chill that turned his enthusiasm into a frozen river. Be it the fox groups outside, the slogans on the stone boards, or the rock guards he created, they were all a part of the demon's plot. With so many methods, he forcefully reduced the Rockmen tribe's resistance to the minimum. Yen Yong was the one who created this scenario personally, seeing the formation of the river, his fear towards Fang Yuan became greater and greater. That male immortal not only had terrifying strength, what truly caused despair was that scheming and devious mind of his, making him seem like an unpredictable abyss. Yen Yong felt himself sinking into purgatory. He was meek like an ant, while behind him, Fang Yuan's giant figure was staring down at him. He was like a corpse, a puppet, the strings that controlled him was in the hands of Fang Yuan. Every day, he saw his tribesmen die, his heart hurt like a dagger was stabbing it. Seeing the enthusiasm of his tribesmen, dying to dig the river, he felt a pitiful grief. If possible, I would rather not know the truth. Maybe, continuing to live in this lie is true bliss. Yen Yong retracted his gaze, waving his hand and bringing the young rockmen towards the next river segment. This is the last Daoist Gu, go. Primeval essence had already been injected, as Fang Yuan flicked his finger and shot the green bean-looking goo into the air. Daoist Gu exploded, turning into pink powder as it rained down on the fox group below. The entire fox group breathed in this powder, and immediately stirred. Very soon, numerous male foxes sprawled on the female foxes' backs, moving vigorously as they injected their life essence into the female fox's body. The fox gestation varied. For example, Golden Fox took 2 months to give birth once. Every time, there were 3 to 4 foxes. As for desolate beasts like Three-tailed Fox, even 100 years was not enough to nurture their fetus. Normally, the stronger the beast, the longer it takes for one gestation. But right now in Hu immortal blessed land, the fox groups were ordinary, they had a short gestation period. Ever since the rock men started digging the river until the process became smooth, Fang Yuan had been using Daoist Gu every day, creating new foxes and strengthening the fox army. Hu immortal did not have an immortal Gu. During the 5th earthly calamity, she was killed by Blue Charm Lightning Shadow, thus her set of enslavement path Gu worms were not spared. But within Dang Hun Mountain, she left behind a number of Gu worms. For example, assistance-type Gu like Burial Soul Toad, or expenditure-type Gu like Estrus Gu, as well as some spare Gu worms for the enslavement path. Most were fox enslavement Gu. To quickly increase his strength, Fang Yuan already used up most of these Gu worms. The fox group had increased in numbers by several times after his hard work. Although the foxes were omnivores, the blessed land could not sustain such a large number. In less than 2 years, a lot of foxes would be unable to find food and die of starvation. But Fang Yuan could not care less, his whole mind was on enduring the 6th earthly calamity now. A few months passed quickly. A river connected the north and east. The overflowing lake flowed along the river channel, moving quickly with ripples splashing. Swish swish. The great flood flowed into the fire pit. As the two forces clashed, river water evaporated and turned to steam, rising into the air. After the river water calmed down, almost half the black flames were doused. Only 3 burning areas remained at the edges. This way, fire and water wiped each other out. The north area's flood was alleviated, and the ground surfaced once more. Large amounts of water flowed along the river and filled tens of pits, forming many lakes. Even though the north area was still full of mud, and the east area was a burnt land without any living plants, the fusion of fire and water had created something like a scab on a bleeding wound. As long as time passed, the east and north areas will eventually regain their vitality. Under Fang Yuan's instructions, Yen Yong brought the injured and tired 100 or so rock men back to their homes at the south area. "Master, what do we do with these clouds?" Little Hu Immortal looked at the sky. The thick clouds made her feel helpless. Even though it rained many times already, a lot of water vapor was still in the air, forming into clouds. These clouds blocked the natural light, causing the east area to be shrouded in darkness. It made people feel irritated. The blessed land did not have sunlight or wind. These clouds would heavily affect the lives of the east area's inhabitants. Ignore them. Fang Yuan looked at the sea of clouds and retracted his gaze. The appearance of the clouds was expected, it was a minor detail. What is truly important is the 6th earthly calamity. If the blessed land survives this, he would slowly settle the issue about the clouds. If it fails to make it, then there is no point in thinking about it. Chapter 4:16, Enduring the Earthly Calamity, 1/2. Several months later. In Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the fox groups gathered into an army and surrounded Dang Hun Mountain tightly. Fang Yuan stood with his arms behind his back at the peak of the mountain and looked at the sky with a solemn expression. Time passed mercilessly. Today was the day of the 6th earthly calamity. Even though Fang Yuan was a Gu immortal in his previous life, he still felt uneasy facing an earthly calamity. Every earthly calamity increases in intensity compared to the previous one. It was a cruel trial that decided the life and death of the Gu immortals and their blessed land. Fang Yuan took over the blessed land when there was only a year and 3 months left. This time was truly short. He could only prepare with his best efforts. Digging a river and alleviating the water and fire crisis was 1, nurturing foxes and increasing their numbers was 2. Holding on to fixed immortal travel Gu and being prepared to retreat was the 3rd preparation. As for the clouds in the sky, as well as the blue charm lightning shadow at the west area, he had no way of dealing with them. The mild wind gradually stopped. High up in the sky, clouds were rumbling and a lump of light was forming. "It's coming." Fang Yuan's pupils shrunk as he muttered. In the cloud sea, the lump light burst out, forming a great white round door, facing the blessed land directly. The light was glaring and dazzling, as a brown-yellow colored large monster descended from the light door like a large rock. Looking at this scene, is this the desolate beast calamity? Fang Yuan squinted and stared without blinking. The giant rock continued to descend silently. Fang Yuan could not help but lick his dry lips as his heart sank. There were countless types of earthly calamities, among them were the desolate beast calamity. In the blessed land, one or multiple desolate beasts will appear, charging towards the blessed land's central control area, wreaking havoc and causing destruction to the blessed land. If they were not exterminated in time, even a large blessed land would be destroyed and reduced to ashes. Damn it, it is a desolate beast, I just hope there is no immortal Gu on this desolate beast. Fang Yuan cursed in his heart. If desolate beasts had immortal Gu on them, their battle strength would surpass Gu immortals. This mysterious desolate beast landed on the ground in a light manner contrary to its giant size. Looking from afar, it looked like a slightly flat giant rock. But Fang Yuan could tell from the images that this large rock was only a brown-yellow exoskeleton glowing with a golden luster. There were thick layers of mud on the shell armor. Just as Fang Yuan was guessing what sort of creature it was, a large pair of cheliped, like two bronze poles, stretched out from the shell. Next, 9 pairs of chelipeds stretched out from 2 sides, landing on the ground, raising the heavy body off the ground. Swamp crab. Seeing this, Fang Yuan spoke immediately, recognizing the true identity of this desolate beast. This was a large crab, with a body that was the size of a mountain. When its body was lifted, the height could reach a quarter of Dang Hun Mountain. Its first pair of chelipeds was more fearsome than steel poles, a pair of pincers that could break mountain rocks or cut a flood dragon in half. Its remaining 18 chelipeds, although thinner than the first pair, they were still thicker than 100-year-old trees. There were large numbers of Gu worms on its body, most would be water and earth path Gu worms. Rarely, it could even contain an entire set of Gu worms. Thankfully, Hu immortal blessed land has ample immortal essence. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth, feeling glad in his heart. Earlier when the swamp crab appeared, the land spirit already struck, using the heavenly power to restrict its Gu worms. All rank 1 to 5 Gu worms could not display their abilities. The most important point was, this desolate beast had no immortal Gu. If it did, then the question would be what immortal Gu that was. Immortal Gu were unique, surpassing the laws of the mortal realm, blessed lands could not restrict them. The existence of an immortal Gu was the most important element in this battle. The swamp crab fully stretched its limbs and started slowly moving towards Dang Hun Mountain. Fang Yuan willed and moved his troops quickly. Large numbers of foxes all over the mountain, rushed like the tides towards the desolate beast. In moments, they encircled the swamp crab. Their claws and teeth scratched the swamp crab's legs, and the physically tougher golden foxes directly crashed into it. But the swamp crab was huge like a mountain and continued moving forward. The ordinary fox groups could not stop it, instead they were stomped into meat paste. Fang Yuan's expression was cruel as he directed the foxes to continue giving up their lives. He bred so many of them, they were meant to be used as disposable pieces. Damage accumulates, any amount of damage they could deal counted. But the swamp crab gave off an unstoppable momentum as it advanced without halting a single step. Like a moving mountain, it did not care about the foxes below. All sorts of attacks landed on the swamp crab's body, like a beautiful display of fireworks. These were the attacks of the 100,000 and myriad beast kings of the foxes. They had all sorts of Gu worms. Under the strength of all the Gu, the mud on swamp crab's body was all blown away. This giant crab, for the first time, stopped its movement. It opened its mouth and spewed out large amounts of mud. At the same time, from its stomach, yellow mud spewed out like a waterfall. The mud landed on the grass and formed a swamp. From the mud, weird-looking crabs stood up. Some had large sizes, ferocious like a tiger. Some had sharp thin needle-like pincers. Some had claw-like legs, having quick speed. In the blink of an eye, a crab army that numbered to 1,000,000 formed. It is the swamp crab indeed. It can breed at any time and place, creating numerous smaller crabs and forming an army. Fang Yuan's expression turned darker. The fox groups were fighting against the crab army, engaging in fierce combat. The number of foxes continued to decrease. The crab army's deaths were much greater than the fox group, but the desolate beast continued to give birth, and there was an endless number of crabs. Fang Yuan quickly instructed the fox groups hiding outside the mountain to return. Thankfully, I expended my estrus gu and bred a large number of foxes, otherwise, my total force would not be enough. In just this short period, Fang Yuan felt dizzy. He directed an insanely large number of foxes, and even though his soul was 6 times as strong as a normal person, it could not take this pressure. With the crab army paving the way, the swamp crab continued moving forward, regaining its former speed. The legs on its body moved one after another, like fingers playing on a piano, with a rhythmic beauty. But an intense battle was going on below it, blood flowed into river, corpses piled into a hill, and every piece of land was tainted with blood. The swamp crab did not differentiate enemies from allies. Every time its legs landed on the ground, there would be a fountain of blood squirting all over the place. When the crab raised its leg, there would be foxes' crushed bodies and broken crab carcasses in the deep pit on the ground. This desolate beast's body was so large, and honestly speaking, it did not move quickly. But because of this, it was able to create an immense mental pressure. Seeing it moving unhindered, Fang Yuan felt that a grim reaper's scythe was hanging over his neck. Damn it! Fang Yuan gritted his teeth. This desolate beast before him was the king of the swamp. Its body was covered in hard shell, it had lurked deep within the swamp for many years, even its eyes had vanished due to de-evolution, it had no weaknesses left. Fang Yuan manipulated the fox groups to hold it back, but it was no use. He could only watch helplessly as the swamp crab got closer. Can you teleport it away? Fang Yuan turned his head, asking the little Hu immortal land spirit. Different Gu immortals gave birth to different blessed lands, and the land spirit's abilities also varied. Some land spirits could teleport others, like Ba Gui from 3 Kings' blessed land, while some could not. Some land spirits could summon rain and wind, and some could manipulate the flow of time freely. Let me try. Little Hu Immortal breathed roughly as she felt an intense mental pressure. She activated the immortal essence, and used all her strength until her cute tiny face turned red. Ah ah! She shouted in a childish way. With a swoosh, the giant swamp crab vanished on the spot and was teleported about 9,000 steps away. We succeeded. Little Hu Immortal's face was red as she gasped. Fang Yuan relaxed slightly. Master, I just expended 1 bead of green grape immortal essence. Little Hu Immortal reported painfully. No matter. Fang Yuan's expression was cold as he continued to order the foxes to attack the swamp crab. After 5 minutes, the swamp crab got close again. Land spirit teleported it away once again. And thus, another green grape immortal essence was expended. Little Hu Immortal felt immense pity at this waste, and Fang Yuan's heart was bleeding. In the entire Hu Immortal blessed land, there were only 78 beads of green grape immortal essence. Fang Yuan used 1 to feed fixed immortal travel Gu. Now he used another 2 to teleport this swamp crab. He still had to use the immortal essence to refine Gu and manage the entire blessed land in the future. There were many areas in which immortal essence were needed, but because Who Immortal died already, these green grape immortal essence could not be replenished. Every single bead used was one less left for the future. Some crabs got through unguarded areas and charged up the mountain. Fang Yuan snorted coldly at this and ordered the land spirit to unleash the might of Dan Hun Mountain. At once, the area the crab army walked on became a death domain. Numerous crabs died, lying on the ground with their bodies intact. Their souls, however, were completely destroyed, creating a peculiar scene. Unfortunately, Dang Hun Mountain's power is to continuously pressure the soul, but the desolate beast's soul is strong and can last for a while. I cannot let it reach Dang Hun Mountain and destroy this precious forbidden ground. Fang Yuan did not participate in battle. Even if he used his strength path Gu worms, he would not be able to break its shell. Most importantly, the swamp crab had not used an immortal Gu yet. Fang Yuan was uncertain if it had one or not. The unknown was the greatest threat. Fang Yuan did not dare to strike rashly. Soon, the swamp crab came again. Just as it was teleported away for the third time, Little Who Immortal's expression changed. Not waiting for Fang Yuan's reaction, she stretched her hand to grab his arm, and they both vanished on the spot. The next moment, a fierce lightning bolt landed on the area they were standing. Boom! With a thunderous sound, mountain rocks shattered. The lightning paused for a moment before shooting back up. It turned into a human-shaped lightning and emitted a loud growl. This was the Blue Charm Lightning Shadow. Chapter 4:17, Enduring the Earth Calamity, 2 halves. Blue Charm Lightning Shadow held its head and screamed in pain. The blue lightning flashed around without any target and only settled down after a long while. Clearly, the lightning figure had suffered injuries in its soul when it entered Dang Hun Mountain. Inside Dang Hun Palace, Fang Yuan's face became ashen as he looked at the scene in the smoke. If it was not for the land spirit's prompt teleportation just before, he might have been dead already. Little Who Immortal patted her chest, her face pale and showing lingering fear. When it rains, it pours. The Blue Charm Lightning Shadow joining the battle no doubt made things worse. Blue Charm Lightning Shadow flew into a rage after its sneak attack did not succeed and started to collide continuously into Dang Hun Mountain. Every time it collided with Dang Hun Mountain, there would be tremors in Dang Hun Palace. Soil and stones flew from the impact and large scorched pits were created from the attacks on the mountain. Fang Yuan felt his heart bleed at this scene. This was Dang Hun Mountain. In this entire world, there was only one of it. Fortunately, Blue Charm Lightning Shadow stopped its attacks after dozens of collisions. Its soul had received considerable damage and the lightning around it was becoming very disorderly. It did not dare to attack again. During this time, the land spirit had teleported the swamp crab another 2 times. In total, they had wasted 5 beads of green grape immortal essence on it. And the originally endless fox army was already at the brink of extinction. What made Little Who Immortal even more discouraged was that this desolate beast only had small wounds and was still moving forward stably like before. It was like an indestructible bone. Whether it was Blue Charm Lightning Shadow or Swamp Crab, they both had one target, destroying the central area, expending the immortal essence and killing the land spirit. Their final target was to destroy the whole blessed land. They were on the same faction and did not have any conflicts, instead they cooperated. While Fang Yuan and the land spirit were having a headache due to this swamp crab, the Blue Charm Lightning Shadow gave up on Dang Hun Mountain and changed its target to the blessed land itself. It did not dare to collide against Dang Hun Mountain anymore, so it began attacking the sky and the earth of this blessed land. It destroyed everything it saw and created craters everywhere. Sky crumbled and showed scars like that of a broken mirror. Fang Yuan felt deep helplessness. Not good. Master, there is a hole in the blessed land. Little Who Immortal spoke hurriedly. Blue charm lightning shadows attacks shattered the world and created a hole. Cut away the surrounding area around the hole. Fang Yuan spoke indifferently, his tone cold as ice. What? Little Who Immortal opened her eyes wide and gave a cry of surprise. If they cut off the area like this, they would not be able to restore it. The holes in blessed lands could be repaired with immortal essence. If the holes were not patched in time and were allowed to enlarge, they would form a passage to the outside world. Once there was a passage, those Gu immortals outside the blessed land would absolutely charge in and make all kinds of schemes. At that time, the situation would be even more out of hand. There were demonic path Gu immortals on T Mountain. Righteous path Gu immortals did not dare to attack because they had a lot of businesses and assets. However, demonic path has no lack of demented people, they were lone forces and liked to take risks. In any case, Fang Yuan had done this a lot in his previous life. Under Fang Yuan's order, Little Who Immortal repeatedly cut off nearby half a square kilometer of the blessed land. Blue charm lightning shadow continually destroyed the world and created holes, while the land spirit continually cut them off. The swamp crab charged towards Dang Hun Mountain again and again. The land spirit had no choice but to teleport it time after time. The amount of green grape primeval essence consumed already reached 13 beads. Sob sob, the blessed land has become smaller and so much immortal essence has been lost. Tears started falling out of Little Who Immortal's eyes as she sobbed. Don't cry. Fang Yuan coldly shouted, his expression ashen. There is no point in delaying. Our only hope is to kill these two calamities. But I don't have an attack-type immortal Gu, and it would be difficult to see any results from attacking the swamp crab with rank 5 Gu in a short time. My only option now is to gamble. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth and revealed a crazed determination. Desolate beasts were very strong, just by relying on their majestic physique and their fierce recovery ability, they could ignore most rank 5 Gu. Especially this swamp crab, it had a strong defense and was upper tier even among the desolate beasts. Fang Yuan had a lot of rank 5 Gu, turn gold Gu, soft bones Gu, pitch black Gu and so on, but using them against swamp crab would be like throwing pebbles in the lake, they could only create slight ripples. They needed to attack continuously for a slight bit of results. However, Fang Yuan was unable to activate these Gu and participate in the offense. If he left the mountain, he could meet with blue charm lightning shadows attacks. He could give the Gu worms to the land spirit to use, but he did not dare to take the risk. Land spirits could also die, and if it was destroyed by blue charm lightning shadow, then Fang Yuan would have no means to even activate fixed immortal travel Gu. Only immortal Gu could change the situation. Fang Yuan might have 2 immortal Gu, but both did not have offensive abilities. Don't teleport it anymore, let this damned swamp crab attack Dang Hun Mountain. Fang Yuan said resolutely and commanded the land spirit, release the whole might of Dang Hun Mountain. Ring. Dang Hun Mountain had been restricted by Little Who Immortal the whole time, and right now, as it was finally let loose, dense fog started rising over the whole mountain. An enormous and formless soul-shaking power burst out of the mountain, spreading as far as 3,000 steps and eradicating everything in its surroundings. Only Dang Hun Palace, under the land spirit's control, was intact. The giant swamp crab soon got close to Dang Hun Mountain. Under the power of Dang Hun Mountain, its sturdy shell was unable to provide any defensive support. Its soul received fierce attacks, causing its movements to slow down. However, This made it go berserk and it increased its speed by another fold, charging towards Dang Hun Mountain. Bam! The enormous pincers heavily smashed on Dang Hun Mountain like steel clamps. The sturdy boulders were as fragile as flour as they were smashed by the attack, holes forming from the impact. The huge crater was at least 0.6 acres wide. Smoke and dust flew all around and the entire Dang Hun Palace also shook from the tremors. The land spirit Little Who Immortal's face paled from shock. Dang Hun Palace kept on shaking, dust started falling from the roof and there were fierce cracks on the walls and pillars. Suddenly, Little Who Immortal let out a tragic shout, "Not good. That blue charm lightning shadow has already moved towards the north and is openly destroying the sky and earth, creating many holes." The image in front of Fong Yuan changed and showed the scene of blue charm lightning shadow attacking the world and creating holes. The Blessed Land's eastern and northern parts had been corroded by the remnant force of the earth calamities, and were weaker than other areas. The blue charm lightning shadow saw these weak points and started attacking them. Fortunately, we had settled the water and fire, otherwise the result of blue charm lightning shadow's destruction would be 10 times more severe. "Master, what should we do?" Little Who Immortal was feeling at a loss. The situation had turned to an extremely terrible state. The swamp crab was like a steel hammer directly pounding the heart and continuously depleting immortal essence while also wrecking Dang Hun Mountain. And blue charm lightning shadow was like an extremely sinister poison. It purposely searched for the weak points of the blessed land and stabbed at them. Every hole it created was like a fresh wound to the blessed land. Fong Yuan's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. The situation was turning more critical, but it instead aroused his fighting spirit. "Land spirit, every time you teleport the swamp crab, send it away by 3,000 steps." "Yes." With the distance shortened, the immortal essence expenditure was also comparatively less. And Dang Hun Mountain's soul-shaking power worked within 3,000 steps, creating injuries to the swamp crab's soul. "Land spirit, cut off the whole northern area." Fong Yuan gave another command. "What?" Little Who Immortal was stupefied and almost did not dare to believe her ears. Who Immortal Blessed Land's northern area was over 600 square kilometers, and Fong Yuan wanted to give up the whole region. Once they cut off the area, Who Immortal Blessed Land would lose this territory forever. This was definitely a huge sacrifice by Fong Yuan. Who Immortal Blessed Land had altogether 4,000 square kilometers of land and he was cutting off 1/6 of it. "Master, this. Little Who Immortal hesitated. "Do as I say." Fong Yuan's gaze was fixed on the image in front of him as he shouted in a stern voice. Little Who Immortal's pink lips puckered and her eyes were filled with tears. The tears fell down and she started crying loudly. Land spirits were the representatives of the blessed land. Cutting off a part of the blessed land was the same as cutting their own flesh. And abandoning the whole northern area was like a person cutting off one of their legs. "Master, don't do it." Little Who Immortal cried loudly and begged. However, Fong Yuan's expression was ruthless and did not make the slightest compromise. Master's orders could not be violated. Little Who Immortal could only endure the pain and cut off the whole northern area. That blue charm lightning shadow was currently in the center of the northern area, destroying the world and creating holes. It suddenly felt something wrong and immediately moved, trying to charge out of the northern area. However, because of 5 kilometers of distance, it could not escape and was trapped in the northern area. It let out a mournful and sharp screech, its tone full of indignance. However, that bit of distance determined its fate. The blue charm lightning shadow could only follow the evaporation of the northern area and land in the outside world. Success! Fong Yuan almost shouted in joy at this scene. If it were normal times where the blue charm lightning shadow had no injuries in its soul, it could absolutely react in time. If not for its crazed attacks towards the world, expending its energy in causing its speed to fall, it could absolutely escape. At the critical moment, Fang Yuan endured the pain and made a minor sacrifice to protect his bigger interests, finally settling this calamity. As to what calamities it would create at the outside world, that was not part of Fang Yuan's consideration. Bam bam bam. The whole Dang Hun mountain was still shaking. The desolate beast swamp crab's soul was very strong and forcefully withstood the pressure, continuously attacking Dang Hun mountain. The nearer it got to Dang Hun mountain, the stronger the soul-shaking power became. Little Hu Immortal teleported the swamp crab away time and again. Right now, it was a battle of foundation between the two sides. If the desolate beast's soul foundation was strong and it overthrew Dang Hun mountain, it would be Fang Yuan's defeat. Conversely, if Dang Hun mountain did not fall, it would be the earthly calamity's defeat. Bam bam. Dang Hun Palace's pillars crumbled and the beams of the roofs snapped. Dust and dirt flew everywhere, accompanied by Little Hu Immortal's whimpering cries. Fang Yuan was silently standing with a cold expression. Strength, I need more strength. He clenched his fists and let out an indignant scream in his mind. Why was it that despite growing so much, he was still so weak when facing heaven and earth, when facing fate? Then continue to grow, continue to become stronger, stronger, and even stronger. As he screamed silently, the swamp crab's movements were gradually slowing down and eventually it collapsed at the waist of Dang Hun mountain, dead. After an arduous process, the sixth earthly calamity was finally over. Chapter 418, Losses and Gains. Fang Yuan walked out of Dang Hun Palace. The pink crystal mountain had holes everywhere, broken rocks were scattered on the ground showing a pitiful sight. Fresh red blood, yellow murky mud, fox and crab corpses mixed together. The desolate beast swamp crab's humongous body was pressing on Dang Hun mountain's mountain waste. It was like a small mountain, extremely eye-catching. The mild wind blew on Fang Yuan's black hair, as his eerie black eyes stared at the battlefield. The pungent smell of blood entered Fang Yuan's nostrils. Closely behind him, Little Hu Immortal Land Spirit's eyes were red, as there were tears on her face. She reported while sniffing. Master, we suffered immense losses. We lost about 666 square kilometers of land, and we only have 68 beads of the immortal essence left. Our fox army of 4,700,000 has fallen to 310,000. As for Gu worms, we lost around 700,000 of them. Hu Immortal managed her blessed land for so many years. After this calamity, the entire blessed land lost about 40 years of development. But Fang Yuan did not think so. His expression was tired, but his gaze could not hide the happiness in his heart. He survived this earthly calamity. It was an obstacle. Now that he survived it, Fang Yuan had time to recuperate. He had ample time to deal with the seventh earthly calamity. Stop crying, the blessed land is safe, that means our hope is safe too. Dang Hun mountain did not collapse, thus we have the resources to start over. Although we lost some land, in the short run, we cannot make use of that land anyway, it will not hinder our development. Fang Yuan patted the land spirit's head, consoling, look, not long later, Dang Hun mountain will be full of gut stones, and we will control another group of rock men. Most importantly, that blue charm lightning shadow was exiled, now, we can develop without any worries. Hu Immortal blessed land will definitely flourish again. This battle was intense and tragic, there were countless foxes and crabs who died near Dang Hun mountain. At the same time, swamp crab's soul was smashed into bits by the mountain's vibrations, absorbed into Dang Hun mountain. In the near future, not too long away, large numbers of gut stones will appear on Dang Hun Mountain unceasingly. Master's words make sense. Little Hu Immortal stopped crying and thought about it clearly. It seems he made sense. The earthly calamity was like a trial. Hu Immortal blessed land got through it. There was not only great losses, but also great gains. What a pity, there were many goo worms living in this swamp crab, but now Dang Hun Mountain killed them all. Little Hu Immortal pouted, staring at this swamp crab's corpse angrily. Rejoice, this desolate beast did not have an immortal goo, otherwise, we might not be standing here. Fong Yuan sighed deeply. This was the luckiest part of this ordeal. One crucial immortal goo with overwhelming ability can easily overturn the entire situation. Even if this swamp crab had an immortal goo, and was killed by Fong Yuan, how Fong Yuan would catching this immortal goo was also a huge problem. Maybe this wild immortal goo might replace the blue charm lightning shadow and become the next great threat to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Fong Yuan was satisfied enough to have survived this earthly calamity. After all, he was only a rank 4 upper stage mortal goo master, yet he managed to kill a desolate beast that was a problem even for goo immortals. Land spirit, clean up the battlefield. Preserve the corpse of the swamp crab well, I am going to rest. Fong Yuan looked around once more before relaxing, immediately feeling strong fatigue. He commanded over 1,000,000 foxes, his soul and mind was overused, he needed sleep immediately. Okay. Little Hu Immortal answered quickly as she looked at the swamp crab's shell with glowing eyes. Every desolate beast was a moving treasure. The blood, fur, bones, intestines in its body were great goo refinement material. You accursed crab, I will tear you apart. Little Hu Immortal raised her chin as her mouth opened, showing her small canine teeth, angrily walking towards the swamp crab while muttering to herself. Fong Yuan had an extremely enjoyable sleep. 3 days later, he woke up, and laid on the bed, not wanting to move at all. This time, he really relaxed his body and mind. The 6th earthly calamity was over. Fong Yuan earned a lot of time for himself, he could finally catch a breath. Ever since his rebirth, he had been plotting and resisting, especially on Xianxia Mountain. He overexerted himself thinking of the ways to get out of his predicament. Now, he finally protected the blessed land. To Fong Yuan, this was a safe and stable place. If Hu Immortal Blessed Land was destroyed, he would be in big trouble. He exposed many things, let's take for example, the fixed immortal travel goo. Fong Yuan was not a goo immortal, he could not keep this immortal goo into his aperture. Once its aura was leaked, goo immortals would easily sense it and come to snatch it from him. Now, fixed immortal travel goo was placed inside Hu Immortal Blessed Land, and because there was immortal essence, he could feed it without worry. Other than that, there was also the refinement of second aperture goo. Without Little Hu Immortal to control the immortal essence, Fong Yuan could not refine this immortal goo, he had to at least reach goo immortal realm first. By then, divine travel goo might have been refined by another person already, it would be too late. Having protecting Hu Immortal Blessed Land, it was a great help to Fong Yuan. Fong Yuan lied down for a while before getting up to eat. After filling up his stomach, he went to sleep again. This time, he slept for 10 hours, he woke up slowly as he felt all the fatigue had been washed away. His mind was clear, his head was working well, and his condition was as good as it could be. Where is the land spirit? He stomped his feet, calling. Little Hu Immortal tore through space with a swoosh, appearing before him. Master, I have dismantled that crab, we can sell it for a good price. Little Hu Immortal's face was red as she was extremely satisfied at breaking apart the culprit for the blessed land's predicament. Oh right, Master, there are 3 letters here, they were sent in from the loophole on the day of the calamity. Little Hu Immortal said, taking out 3 gu and handed them to Fong Yuan. When loopholes enlarge enough to become tunnels, people could enter and exit. But before that, only gu worms could enter through the small gaps. These 3 gu were all letter path gu worms. One had a paper crane appearance, it was the rank 3 lightning symbol paper crane gu. One was a green bird, rank 5 and looking lifelike, it was the letter sending green bird gu. One looked like a sword, it was the rank 3 flying sword letter gu. Fong Yuan's gaze shone as he took out the letter sending green bird gu. The green bird transformed into a letter, it was sent by the rank 7 gu immortal Feng Jiu Gu. Fong Yuan was not surprised, the moment he saw this green bird gu, he had a feeling it was him. Feng Jiu Ji's tone in his letter was calm, he first expressed his admiration and praise for Fong Yuan, before stating his intention, to arrange for a battle between Fong Yuan and his daughter Feng Jin Huang. It seems that after Feng Jin Huang returned to Spirit Affinity House, she had been gloomy, moody, and dispirited. During this period, she had been cultivating diligently, to reclaim her pride. The battle was initiated by her, she wants to have a fair and square fight with Fong Yuan, betting the glory of Spirit Affinity House and Immortal Crane sect. Humph, you want to battle, do I have to agree? Fong Yuan scoffed in disdain. His time was so tight, there was not enough time to cultivate, Fong Yuan would not waste his time and effort accepting Feng Jin Huang's challenge. Feng Jin Huang was born in a great family, she had Gu immortals as her parents, and a sect to support her. Even if she had a blessed land, and the calamity came, there would be a huge group of people fighting it for her. But Fong Yuan was all alone, he had to rely on himself for everything. He had no mood to play around with this rich missy. What a stupid idea, she wants to reclaim her glory, so I must play along with her. Laughable. Fong Yuan snorted. Different from others, he did not fear Feng Jiu Gu. That is because soon, Feng Jiu Gu would be called up by the heavenly court, and would successfully ascend, it will not be easy for him to come down and enter Central Continent again. But in this letter, it seems that this pair of father and daughter think that I am a disciple of Immortal Crane sect, what is going on? Fong Yuan's eyes shone with suspicion. The other party was a Gu immortal, they would naturally not make such a lowly mistake. That means, there were hidden complications. Fong Yuan retrieved the flying sword letter Gu. Opening it and taking a look, it was another challenge letter. But in this letter, it was all swearing and scolding, almost all of Fong Yuan's ancestors were mentioned, even Immortal Crane sect's honor was used to incite Fong Yuan to accept the battle. Finally, there was even a threat, if Fong Yuan did not agree, he would reveal the contents of this letter to the public, and let the world know that Fong Yuan was a coward. Fong Yuan looked carefully, lightly smiling, oh, it is this rascal Jian Yisheng. Jian Yisheng, a metal path Gu master, his appearance and personality were very perverted. He was most skilled at sneak attacks, and hated suffering losses the most. He was one of the demonic path Gu immortals on Tian-Ti Mountain, he was truly a mean and devious coward. In Fong Yuan's previous life, he got ambushed by him many times. He eventually made Fong Yuan angry enough to summon the Blood Sea, forcing this Jian Yisheng to hide in his blessed land, afraid to battle. He blocked him for 20 years, until Jian Yisheng realized that he had angered the wrong person. He could not take it, and eventually kneeled down before Fong Yuan to surrender, without a trace of a Gu immortal's dignity. As for why this person was challenging Fong Yuan, it was because he was extremely unlucky. After Fong Yuan discarded a portion of the blessed land, and threw the blue charm lightning shadow towards Tian-Ti Mountain, Jian Yisheng coincidentally met with it. At this time, although Jian Yisheng was a Gu immortal, he had no immortal Gu, and was thrashed by the blue charm lightning shadow. He escaped back to his blessed land pathetically, and finally managed to get free of the blue charm lightning shadow. After he got home, he counted his losses, and was filled with rage, stomping his feet. After finding the culprit, he sent a flying sword letter Gu, challenging Feng Yuan. Humph, he knows I am immortal, but still challenged me as a Gu immortal. He even wrote his letter so righteously, talking about fairness. This piece of shit is still as shameless as I remember. But, why did he think I am a member of Immortal Crane sect? Feng Yuan opened the lightning symbol paper Crane Gu with great suspicion. He opened it slightly, and his pupils shrunk, showing a surprised expression. What? Feng Zheng is alive. Reading on, his suspicions were cleared. So that's it, this He Feng Yang from Immortal Crane sect is a smart person, using this method to eliminate his competitors. But he greatly underestimated me. Why would I join Immortal Crane sect? But what the letter mentioned is exactly what I need now. Thinking so, Feng Yuan made up his mind. He called the land spirit, go, open the blessed land slightly, and let the Gu master who resembles me in. Chapter 419, Feng Zheng's Pain. Tian Ti Mountain stood high above the clouds, reaching 3,000 kilometers in total. It was situated at the center of Central Continent. It was the land of inheritances, the mountain of saints. During ancient times, it was the ladder of immortals, able to ascend to the heavenly court. Immortal Crane sect's elite disciples were now standing at the foot of Tian Ti Mountain, having waited for an hour already. How much longer do we need to wait? This Feng Yuan is putting up too much airs, right? SSH, quiet. He is the brother of Guyu Feng Zheng, the owner of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Speaking of that, this brother of Feng Zheng's is really amazing. He managed to defeat Feng Jin Huang, Xiao Qi Xing, Ying Xing Ji and the others. So what? If I had a supreme elder supporting me in the dark, helping me to use fixed immortal travel Gu, I would be able to win the blessed land as well. Our clan's elders are truly smart. Using Feng Zheng to attract their attention, while the real trump card was Feng Yuan all along. N. The Epsilon Lb N, a haven for bookworms and dreamers. In order to make this a reality, Immortal Crane sect lied to all their disciples. Immortal Crane sect disciples now knew that there was someone named Guyu Feng Yuan in their sect. During these 3 months, he had become the hottest topic that everyone was discussing. He was mysterious and low-key, it made people curious. Shocking the world in one move, he obtained Hu Immortal Blessed Land for Immortal Crane sect, and even allowed Immortal Crane sect to stand out among the 10 sects. It made the other disciples feel proud. All their discussions entered Feng Zheng's ears. Feng Zheng was stand at the front of these people, his gaze was dim as he looked at Tian Ti Mountain. These days, he had been a walking corpse, he did not know how he survived the last few days. After Feng Zheng left Qing Mao Mountain, he swore to exact revenge, to get justice for his deceased clansmen. He carried a great hatred with him, the objective of revenge was sustaining and motivating him to cultivate. He was more hardworking than all the other disciples, he did not even slack for a second. He had fantasized many times, the scene when he finds Feng Yuan, defeating him and making him kneel on the ground, repenting for all that he did on Qing Mao Mountain. The clansmen in the afterlife would finally rest in peace after that. Thus, on Dang Hun Mountain, he did not give up despite numerous occasions of wanting to do so. Every time he thought of Feng Yuan, there would be a strong driving force in his heart, supporting him to continue climbing. He wanted to get Hu Immortal inheritance, not only because he did not want to let his master down, or disappointing the clan's expectations, it was also because his chances of getting revenge would be much greater if he had the blessed land. But, he did not expect, that life would come hitting him this hard and suddenly. Guyu Feng Yuan, his blood-related brother, the main character of his numerous nightmares, appeared on the mountain top. Under everyone's view, he obtained the inheritance, even Gu immortals could do nothing to him. Fang Zheng who failed returned to the sect. Shock. Pain. Loss. Fear. He knew the clan's lies, he knew the truth, but precisely so, the shadow in his heart grew by many times. This trauma had been nurturing in him since he was young. Why is brother so smart? But I am so stupid. Why was it that I cultivated so hard, yet I still lost to Fang Yuan? Why did this happen in southern border, and also in central continent? Is it true that I Guyu Fang Zheng, am destined to live in his shadow my entire life, never to surpass him? Every time Fang Zheng thought of this, there would be an indignant feeling in his heart, urging him to cultivate more. But this time, it was different. It was different. Thinking of the mission the clan just passed to him, Fang Zheng's body shuddered. The blessed land was in Fang Yuan's control. In order to obtain Hu immortal blessed land, the sect was recruiting Fang Yuan. As long as he handed over the blessed land, he would be Immortal Crane's sect's elder. Central Continent sect members were classified from low to high as outer disciple, inner disciple, elite disciple, legacy disciple. Above disciples, there were sect elder, often at rank 4 cultivation, controlling the many aspects of the sect. Above sect elder was sect leader, he had to be at least rank 5 middle stage, and was the key person in charge. And above the clan leader, there were supreme elders. These supreme elders were all Gu immortals, they were rarely seen during normal times, secluded in cultivation. Only when the sect faces a life and death situation, or when something important happens, they would appear and let the world know the true power of Immortal Crane's sect, as one of the top 10 sects. Since I joined Immortal Crane's sect, I had cultivated so diligently these years, from outer disciple, I became an inner disciple, and from inner disciple, I became an elite disciple. During the sect examination, I emerged as the top disciple of among the elite disciples. But now, Fang Yuan just has to say a word, and he would become a sect elder. Any disciple who sees him have to bow and pay respects. Fang Zheng felt a great pain in his heart every time he thought about this. If Fang Yuan really became an elder, he would have to bow and pay respects to this enemy every time he saw him. Was there fun in such a life? Was there meaning in living? Master, has all the effort and hard work I put in been in vain? At this point, Fang Zheng was standing at Tian-Ti mountain foot, waiting to meet Fang Yuan. He had unavoidably fallen into deep self-doubt. Lord Sky Crane quickly consoled him, Fang Zheng, you have to adjust your mindset. Immortal Crane's sect sacrificed a lot for Hu immortal inheritance, we even used an Immortal Gu. For the sect, we have to look at this from the big picture, and put down our personal grudges temporarily. Fang Zheng, you have to understand, it was Immortal Crane's sect who nurtured you. Now that the sect needs you make some sacrifices, you cannot forget your roots. Although he said that, Lord Sky Crane was sighing in his heart. He understood Fang Zheng's personality, thus his heart was even more worried. All along, the notion of revenge was driving Fang Zheng forward like a pillar, it was also his obsession in this cultivation journey. But now, the sect's orders were for Fang Zheng to let down this obsession. This was more fatal than any injury. Most likely, after suffering such an impact, Fang Zheng would no longer have any drive left, he would let himself dwell in self-pity. But what can we do? That is a blessed land, and it even contains a forbidden ground like Dang Hun Mountain. The gustins on the mountain can be used by our disciples and make our entire sect's strength surge. Other than that, Fang Yuan has Blood Skull Gu and Fixed Immortal Travel Gu on him. These things are way too valuable, they are so important, how can an elite disciple compare to them at all? Lord Sky Crane felt sad in his heart, but he still said to Fang Zheng, my good disciple, you have to control your desire for revenge. A little impatience spoils great plans, treat this as a trial of your endurance. After seeing your brother, do not attack. Within the blessed land, you are not his match. Saying so, Lord Sky Crane recalled what he Feng Yang instructed him. I know the enmity between Fang Yuan and Fang Zheng. If needed, we can sacrifice Fang Zheng, you can negotiate in place of Fang Zheng. He Feng Yang's pressure was great at the moment, all the supreme elders were looking at his actions. Master, you are telling me to treat this as a trial? I will try. Fang Zheng loosened his clenched fist, then clenched it again, he was struggling in his heart, he felt pain and anger. If someone swore to get revenge, and cultivated to succession, only to find that his enemy had died. That is pain. If someone swore to get revenge, and cultivated to succession, but found that he could not beat his enemy, and that his enemy was still living well. That is much greater pain. If someone swore to get revenge, and cultivated to succession but found out that not only was he unable to beat his enemy, he even had to use a fake friendly attitude to negotiate with him, hoping the enemy would become his superior. This was the greatest pain of all pain. He, Fang Zheng, don't think much of it. Fang Yuan might not be having a good time, there is a calamity in the blessed land. You cannot imagine the might of a calamity. Even if your brother had an immortal Gu, he is still immortal. Soon, he will experience the terrifying powers of an earthly calamity. By then, the blessed land will be full of loopholes, and he would have suffered a huge loss. You have a high chance of succeeding in this trip. Lord Sky Crane consoled him again. Fang Zheng heard this and his mood became slightly more relaxed. The earthly calamity is beginning. He Feng Yang muttered, he had been staying behind the scenes, firstly, it was to protect these elite disciples, secondly, it was to prevent the ill intentions of other Gu masters, and thirdly, if Fang Yuan could not block this earthly calamity, he would have to help out. At this moment, he was starting at the spot where Hu immortal blessed land was hiding in on Tian Ti mountain, sensing that there was an aura of destruction. Soon, his lips curled into a smile as there was a peculiar sight on Tian Ti mountain. Pieces after pieces of grassland appeared on Tian Ti mountain. They were like clouds or fog, illusory and not real. How could there be a grassland on a mountain? This was the loophole of the blessed land, and a large loophole at that, allowing outsiders to see the scene inside the blessed land. Such a loophole could only fit Gu worms, there was still some way to go before Gu masters can go in. Lord Sky Crane at the other side had already called out, the loophole appeared, send the lightning symbol paper Crane Gu in. Fang Zheng gritted his teeth, under everyone's supervision, he injected primeval essence and activated the Gu worm. Lightning symbol paper Crane Gu was fast as lightning, flying into the loophole. But right after, the grassland image turned into a lump of primeval essence, as it dissipated in the air. Lightning symbol paper Crane Gu flew for 2 rounds before flying back to Fang Zheng's hands. This Fang Yuan is giving up a portion of the blessed land, completely removing it. It seems he is worried that Gu masters might entire when the loophole turns into a tunnel. He Feng Yang was slightly shocked, but sneered soon after, go ahead, let's see how much land you can discard. Every piece of land you abandon is akin to giving up your own flesh. But immediately after, He Feng Yang's expression changed. He's still continuing. He's already thrown a few square kilometers worth of land. He is really bold, no wonder he managed to snatch the inheritance. But a few moments later, He Feng Yang's expression turned ugly. It seems that this earthly calamity is very dangerous this time. But how much land is he going to give up? He has already thrown tens of square kilometers of land away. This wastrel. Chapter 420, Meeting of Brothers. On Tian Ti Mountain, loopholes appeared one after another with increasing frequency. Not only were Immortal Crane Sect's elite disciples watching carefully, many Gu immortals were also keeping watch behind the scenes. During this period, Fang Zheng tried 3 times, finally managing to send the lightning symbol paper crane Gu into the Blessed Land. A green bird spread its wings and flew into the loopholes as well, reaching the Hu immortal Blessed Land. This is a letter-sending green bird Gu. What is Feng Jiuge trying to do? Feng Yang saw this and his expression turned dark. But at the next moment, his pupils shrunk to pin size, his mouth opened wide as he shocked an extremely flabbergasted expression. My God! He's discarding such a big area of the Blessed Land. Feng Yang was tongue-tied, he was stunned like a statue. Fang Yuan discarded 600 square kilometers worth of land. Tian Ti mountain waste was full of the Blessed Land's projected image, grassland filled everyone's vision. A Gu immortal was the first to react, appearing with the flash of a sword. Ha ha ha, what a big piece of blessed land, it is mine, don't even think of snatching it from me. Jian Yixing shouted, wanting to pull this piece of land into his blessed land, expanding his territory. But at this moment, a lightning flash appeared. F***ck. Jian Yixing was caught unguarded, he shouted profanities as the blue charm lightning shadow sent him flying like a cannonball. But Jian Yixing was not to be trifled with, he immediately engaged in battle with blue charm lightning shadow. They created a huge commotion, the earth rumbled as Immortal Crane Sect's elite disciples watched in shock. The more shocking thing was, over a dozen people appeared next, taking a piece of this 600 square kilometers land at lightning speed like a pack of hungry wolves. You goddamn bastards! I lured the monster away, I made the most effort, but you guys didn't even leave me a piece of the land. F***ck all your ancestors. I curse you all to have constipation, all your children will be born with a chicken's tail. Jian Yixing shouted angrily, he had never suffered such a great loss in his life, getting thrashed by the blue charm lightning shadow so pathetically. And there is that little rascal Fang Yuan, he is really evil and daring, scheming against me like this. Fight me fairly if you have guts. He sent out the flying sword letter Gu. Flying sword letter Gu was extremely fast, it could tear through space, even without a loophole, it could enter the Blessed Land. Immortal Crane Sect's gang was in a daze. Was this the mannerism of a Gu immortal? This Jian Yixing is a complete disgrace to us Gu immortals. Feng Yang covered his face in shame. Immerse yourself in the storyverse, N. At this, there was a red door and at this time, a bright white gold light appeared. There was a red door in the light, 30 meters tall, it had a rainbow-colored plaque. Pink-colored clouds gathered, as the rainbow light shone on Fang Zheng's body. In the blink of an eye, Fang Zheng vanished on the spot. Sending blue charm lightning shadow or the desolate beast swamp crab out of the blessed land was beyond little Hu Immortal's abilities. But to transport one Fang Zheng, it was easy. He got in. Seeing this, Feng Yang's heart eased. A flash of lightning bolt descended from the sky, it was the blue charm lightning shadow. But the white gold light moved the red door away in time. By a hair's breadth, the blue charm lightning shadow's intention of entering the blessed land was thwarted. Fang Zheng felt his surroundings turn blur before he regained his sight, and the environment around him had changed completely. He was standing on a grassland, grass was all around him. There were clouds above him, extremely thick and dark clouds. Not far away, there are several lakes with ripples on the surface. I reached to immortal blessed land. Fang Zheng quickly reacted, all his gu worms were sealed now, it was the same as during the competition. A smoky lump of shadow appeared before him, expanding into the size of a mirror. Fang Yuan's figure appeared in the mirror, he was sitting with his back leaning on the chair. He was crossing his right leg over his left leg as his left hand was placed on his knee, while his right hand was holding his chin softly on top of the chair handle. His black hair was casually hanging over his face as his eyes squinted, showing a lazy and casual demeanor, but also gave people a sense of danger, dark and mysterious. My cute little brother, to think I would see you again in Central Continent. Fang Yuan spoke. His voice was so foreign, yet so familiar to Fang Zheng. Fang Zheng's body shuddered, his eyes burst forth with intense rage as he growled, "Gu Fang Yuan, you crazy and hopeless demon, you murdered your entire clan. I will kill you personally." Saying so, he rushed towards Fang Yuan. But this Fang Yuan was only a projection from the smoke, after Fang Zheng charged towards it, it dissipated, but quickly gathered back into a perfect image of Fang Yuan again. Fang Zheng pointed at Fang Yuan, shouting, "Fang Yuan, you don't even have the courage to face me? You coward! Shameless traitor, you are an inhuman animal. So what if you died, to think that you murdered your entire clan just to preserve your life? Such an outrageous act, how could you do it? Are you still human?" He. Fang Yuan laughed heartily, casually leaning on his chair, "My cute little brother, you are still stupid as ever. Regardless of whether I did anything, they were going to die. If that is so, why can't I live? If not for my counterattack, do you think you would be brought back to Central Continent? In fact, I saved your life. I am your benefactor. Dog shit. You are distorting the truth, you are unbelievably shameless." Fang Zheng heard Fang Yuan's words, and was extremely angered by it. Fang Yuan's laughter came to a stop, he sighed, "Fang Zheng, my brother, you are a huge disappointment. All these years, you have not improved one bit. No matter how high your cultivation is, you are just a pawn piece. Alright, let's talk business. I've seen Immortal Crane's sex letter, don't bother mentioning those ridiculous promises like making me an elder. We can however, go through with the transaction and deals." Fang Zheng's chest was moving up and down, his breathing was heavy as he stared at Fang Yuan's image with hatred. This pair of twins, they looked almost identical, and had closest blood relation in them. Unfortunately, they were life and death enemies. Fang Zheng took a few deep breaths, holding in his killing intent towards Fang Yuan, thinking of the clan's instructions, "Within Hu Immortal Blessed Land, our sect is not interested in the fox groups or gu worms. But the gut stones on Dang Hun Mountain have some value. We will send disciples here by batches, you will bring them to Dang Hun Mountain." "Stop. Before Fang Jing finished speaking, he was interrupted by Fang Yuan. I do not believe your immortal crane sect's sincerity. This is what I want, prepare it for me as soon as possible, and hand it over to me. I do not have primeval stones, but I have the swamp crab's corpse to trade instead. The details are in the letter, go back and consider it. Once he finished speaking, a small lightning bolt flew and landed in Fang Zheng's hand. It was that lightning symbol paper crane Gu. This lightning symbol paper crane Gu had already been refined by Fang Yuan, and was now used by him. The contents included the Gu worms and materials Fang Yuan wanted, as well as details on the swamp crab's blood, meat, bones, and shell etc. Fang Jing raised his head, and wanted to speak, but he saw the scene before him change. He had been transported out already. Check around, are there any suspicious things? After Fang Jing left, Fang Yuan did not relax, but instead gave instructions to Land Spirit. The blessed land could not restrict immortal Gu. Fang Yuan did not meet with Fang Jing personally because he was worried about him bringing in immortal Gu. Immortal Crane's sect had a lot of resources, they had quite a lot of immortal Gu. Although Fang Zheng's aperture was not able to carry immortal Gu, as the aura would easily leak, all sorts of things could happen in the Gu world, there were definitely methods to conceal an immortal Gu's aura. Fang Yuan had to guard against this. The land spirit checked for a few times and there were no problems. At this point, Fang Yuan finally relaxed. After the earthly calamity, will the situation improve from here? Fang Yuan squinted his eyes, considering his current predicament. The current situation was way more advantageous for him than he expected. In order to devour who immortal blessed land alone, immortal Crane's sect shield him. Such guts, it was expected of one of the 10 great sects of Central Continent. Benefits above everything, enemies and friends were all built on this basis. Using common words, it was the foresight of a big picture. Restricted by the sect system, and under the pressure of the big picture, so what if Fang Jing hated him? He still had to come over and discuss the transactions. Once they realized that they could not capture me so easily, that being forceful would just destroy everything, immortal Crane's sect would naturally come to negotiate with me, to make transactions. Even if outsiders find out, there would be no rumors of allying with the demonic path. That is because, immortal Crane's sect had already admitted that I am a part of their sect. It was a meticulous decision. But this is what I needed too. Even if this disciple identity is so fake, it is enough to drive away the other forces. Looking at Jian Yisheng and Feng Jiuji's letters, one can easily tell how precious this identity is. Fang Yuan thought about it, he did not mind this. The truth is, he is still in the demonic path, he is still alone, doing things his way, no one could restrict him. But at the same time, he could do transactions, and exchange for resources he needed. Originally, I wanted to go to Langya Blessed Land and snatch Connecting Heaven Gu. But now that I can deal with Immortal Crane's sect, I do not need to do that. Although, with who Immortal Blessed Land being in my possession, Immortal Crane's sect would not let this go, they are making deals at this point because of wariness, and that they have no choice for now. I cannot be careless and give them a weakness to exploit. Fang Yuan reminded himself. As for his brother Fang Zheng, that was secondary. Killing him would only be for the blood skull Gu, to raise the aperture's aptitude by a little. The problem it would bring is making an enemy out of Immortal Crane's sect, and putting himself into grave danger. Killing his own brother is a pure demonic act. If outsiders find out, it would be interpreted as Fang Yuan betraying Immortal Crane's sect. At that point, the 10 sects and numerous demonic Gu immortals would place their greedy gazes towards who Immortal Blessed Land. There is no such thing as an absolute secret. Once the matter is exposed, even if Immortal Crane's sect wanted to continue acting, they would not be able to. Fang Yuan's current situation was, raising aptitude was less important than his other objectives. Even if his aptitude was raised, he still needed resources to cultivate. The most important point now was to stabilize the situation and make full use of the blessed land's resources to convert them into his own strength.